Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to say call halal, like how about Shema Mashiach Yahushai. Let us say all praises to the Most High God Yahweh, who's only begotten Son Yahushai, who the world and the cause Jesus Christ. It's the soldier guy Sean coming at y'all with another sit down. The Lord willing, it's edifying and it feeds the flock, and it expounds on questions that brothers and sisters have had before, right, about the scriptures. So, as you can see by the title of this video, it's been in my spirit for a while now to make a sit down about this topic, about how we should be raising our young ones in the truth, about how we as a people have failed to do so, which have landed us in this predicament that we're in right now, right? So we as a people should be raising our kids in this truth, meaning we should be raising our kids on keeping the law, statutes, and commandments, and having an understanding of scriptures, right? Breaking down who we are as Israelites, how we're the Israelites from their nativity until their adulthood, right? So they will already know this. So we wouldn't have to be 20-something years old and just now learning about this. So we would be born, or we would have grown up knowing this information, which would make things a lot easier. We wouldn't even be in captivity in the first place if we taught our youth to keep the commandments from their youth, right? So I'm just going to go through a few precepts just to further demonstrate what raising your kids from youth looks like and the benefits of raising your kids according to the scriptures from youth. So let's get into it. So I'm going to start out with Deuteronomy 6 and verse 6. This is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 6, verse 6. And these words which I command thee this day, those words that are being commanded that day, which is the law, statutes, and commandments, right? Which I command thee this day shall be in thine heart. And we know the heart's actually talking about the mind. So the commandments are going to be in our mind. Another precept, or roughly paraphrasing that it brings to mind, is we're supposed to continually meditate on these scriptures. So they're supposed to be on our mind from this day on, right? So in verse 7, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children. And it says we should be teaching our children diligently these words. So when you're doing something diligently, you're doing it without ceasing. You're doing it constantly. It's a constant thing. We're supposed to be constantly teaching our children, because they have such low attention spans, or they don't really remember things unless it's drilled into their heads. We're supposed to be constantly drilling these laws, statutes, and commandments into their heads until it sticks, until it becomes habit for them, until they know how to do these things by habit. So we're supposed to be diligently teaching our children how to keep these laws, statutes, and commandments, right? So, and thou shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thy house. We're supposed to be talking of the laws. We're supposed to be breaking it down to them when we sit in the house, whether it just be watching movies or talking or just congregating or doing whatever it is. We're supposed to be bringing up these laws, statutes, commandments, and getting them ingrained in their head from youth, right? When thou sittest in thy house, and when thou walkest by the way, wherever we go, whether it's grocery shopping, whether it's out in public, right? We're not supposed to be ashamed to talk about these gospels, right? Especially to our children, we're not supposed to be ashamed to teach them out in public about these scriptures. So wherever we go, wherever we're going shopping, or we're just going to the park with your kids, wherever you are, just take time to teach them about these laws, statutes, commandments, because it is their heritage. They're supposed to know about this, right? Sittest in thy house, and when thou walkest by thy way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up. So when you're going to go to sleep, you should be doing that. You should be posing them bedtime questions about scriptures, about whether or not they have the understanding of certain scriptures, right? Certain basic scriptures, like how would you prove you're an Israelite? Things of that nature. You should be asking your children, right? So that's how we raise our children up from youth, to understand these scriptures, to stay with these scriptures, right? And just to prove that once we do these things, right, it's gonna stick with us, right? Let's get this precept. It's the book of Proverbs. Right, just to prove that this is supposed to be something that you do from their youth, so it stays with them, right? So, hast thou children? If you have children, this is pertaining to you. Instruct them and bow down their neck from youth. So if you have children, instruct them in this law, right, and bow down their neck from youth. Teach them the pecking order, or so to speak, right? Teach them you're their father, you're over them from their youth, and teach them and instruct them. So when you bow down their neck, they won't grow up to be rebellious. When you bow down their neck to these laws, statutes, and commandments, they won't grow up to rebel against it, because their necks have been bowed down from their youth. So when they grow up, they'll have a fear to rebel against those laws, which is what Israel lacks, which got us in that situation. So we, as the older generation, or as the adults, have to take responsibility and teach the younger ones, so we won't be stuck in this situation again, right? So we can do better, so we can get out of this captivity, right, by keeping these laws, statutes, and commandments. And it starts from youth, right? Now that we learned it, we have to teach our children, because our parents didn't learn it, so we had to learn it for ourselves. So we want to do better than them. We want to leave them off better than our parents left us off, right? So this is the book of Proverbs, chapter 22 and verse 15, right? And this is a scripture to show you exactly how to do that, right? How to bow down their neck from youth unto the law, right? So this is the book of Proverbs, chapter 22, verse 15. Foolishness is bound in the heart of a child, right? So obviously they're going to do folly. Obviously they're going to do stupid things, right? It's bound in the heart of a child. You're going to see it there, right? But the rod of correction shall drive it far from him. But the rod of correction is going to drive it far from him. So those foolish things, you're gonna beat them out of it. You're gonna discipline them out of it, right? So the only thing that's left is righteousness, is walking upright, is keeping the law, statutes, and commandments. So that's how we raise our children. We discipline them, right? And Babylon have got our people thinking that when you discipline your child, it's child abuse. No, it's not. There's a difference between abusing the child and disciplining the child. I grew up being disciplined, and now because I've been disciplined, I have a sense of moral about me, or I have a sense of integrity about me, where when I go out, I won't do certain things, or I will do certain things to highlight the things that my parents have disciplined me in, right? And that goes back to being bowed down from their youth, because they did this to me from my youth, right? Now that I'm an adult, I won't rebel against this. So our people have got to realize that, right? It's not wrong to discipline your child. It's actually love to discipline your child. Matter of fact, let's get that. If you love, he that spared the rod. Okay. So I can bear with me for a second. Okay. Right, so this is the book of Proverbs, chapter 13, verse 24, right? So it's love to discipline your child. It's love to teach him the ways of life, right? It's love to teach him how to not get himself killed out in these streets, because he doesn't know that a soft answer turneth away wrath. It's love to teach him those things. It's love to teach him wisdom, to discipline him in the ways of wisdom, right? That's love, right? So let's get that. This is the book of Proverbs, chapter 13, verse 24. He that spareth the rod hateth his son, right? You hate your son because you won't teach him the ways of life. Therefore, you're leading him to the ways of death. By you not doing one, you're leading him to the other. So you have to discipline him if you love him, because lack of discipline is what's going to get him killed out here. Makes sense, right? So our people got to discipline our children in the ways of wisdom, which is the law, statutes, and commandments. That's how we got discipline our children. That's how we got to raise them, right? Understanding Proverbs and then teaching into our children, understanding the wisdom of Solomon, understanding the law, statutes, and commandments and the principles behind them, and then teaching it onto our children. That's how we discipline them. That's what we discipline them in. And we discipline them by not sparing the rod, right? So our people got to understand this and work to that, right? Because there's many monsters out in these streets, right, that lack discipline, that lack understanding or wisdom, which have been causing deaths by the droves, by the hundreds, by the millions, murdering each other, because their parents didn't know better than to just leave them by themselves and not teaching the law, statutes, and commandments, which is to our detriment, right? Because we don't know these things, it's to our destruction. If we knew these things, we would know the ways of life, right? The Most High said He set before us life and death. Now that we don't teach our children the ways of life, we're dead in these streets, right? We're zombies walking. And we got to fix that. How we fix that is by teaching the youth. Now that we've taught ourselves these laws, statutes, commandments, now that we've come back to these laws, statutes, commandments, we got to do them better and teach our kids, right? That's the least we could do. So we got to teach our kids in these laws, statutes, commandments, right? Matter of fact, let's get that in Sirach. This is the book. Sirach 30. I'm going to read throughout Sirach. I'm going to skip throughout Sirach, but I just wanted to get this precept that just came to mind in Sirach 30, right? So this is the book of Sirach 30, verse 3, right? He that teacheth his son grieveth the enemy, right? So our enemy wants us to be dead in these streets. But when you teach him these laws, statutes, commandments, when you teach him how to live, how to conduct himself, and that he's royalty, right? When you teach him those things, you're grieving your enemy. Because our enemy wants us to be nothing but niggas and spics. But once we start reading the scriptures and we start teaching our children out of the scriptures that they are royalty, that they do come from the chosen lineage that the Most High God called above all else, we grieve the enemy. So we got to come back to these laws, statutes, and commandments, because we all know we want to get out of here. But it starts with teaching, right? It starts with understanding these laws, statutes, and commandments, and teaching one another that. That's how we get out of here. And we should teach our children these things so the enemy could be grieved, so we won't be seeing them die out in these streets at such an early age, right? If we could help it, these laws, statutes can help it, right? So when you teach your son, you grieve with the enemy, right? So let's read on. And before his friends, he shall rejoice of him. Yeah, and before your friends, you shall rejoice of him, because you're going to be proud. You're going to be proud of your son, or you're going to be proud of your children, because you disciplined them and you taught them how to live, right? And they since their necks was bowed down to it, right? They received it and they lived according to it. And they've made you proud. They took your teachings and they built a foundation upon that. There's nothing that can make a father prouder or parents prouder than for them to teach their kids, and then their kids take that understanding, right? And then build something on top of that understanding. It shows that you actually understood what they taught you and took it to heart. That's how we grieve the enemy. That's how parents found joy of their children, right? So I'm going to read down to verse 4. Verse 4, though his father die, right? So after he taught you, right? After he taught you and you're a grown man now, and then he passes away, right? Let's read what happens. Yet he is as though he were not dead. It's like he's never died, right? Well, let's see why it's like he's never died, right? For he have left one behind him that is like himself, because he taught you in the ways, right? He taught you in the ways of how to be a man, or your mother taught you in the ways of how to be a woman. After she passes, because she taught you in those ways, the way which she acted according to herself, which also goes back to not being a hypocrite, because you can't teach your children to not do something, but you yourself are doing it. So if you're going to teach your son something, you should be conducting yourself in like manner. That's why I said, even though he dies, it was as though he never left, because he was conducting himself in that like manner first. That's why I keep saying we got to learn these things first, and then we got to teach them to our son. We got to learn these things, and we got to act these things out before we teach them to anybody. Because a hypocrite shall not stand in the sight of the Most High, and you can't be a hypocrite in the sight of your children either, because they're not going to follow you if you're not doing one thing, but you're commanding them to follow it, right? So we got to not be hypocrites. We got to learn these things, and we got to teach them to our sons, right? We got to teach them to our daughters, because this is our law, statutes, commandments. That's how we grow as a nation. This is what they were meant to do, or this is their purpose. We were meant to teach them to our children. We were meant to live according to them, right? So that's what we got to do. For ye have left behind one that is like unto himself, right? People are going to see your son. They're going to be like, you know what, you act just like your father. But his father's long past. But because his father taught him in the ways in which he acted, in the righteous ways which he acted, right? And then his son took those things in and started conducting himself in like manner. Once his father leaves, it'll be as though he never left, right? It'll be as though he never went anywhere, right? Because you taught your son, and you could have joy of him in the end, because he took your teachings and he became much better for it, right? And the teachings that better us is these laws, that's his commandments, which is for our betterment, right? So let me get this is the book of Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 6 verse 17, for the very true beginning of her is the desire of discipline. The her in this situation is talking about wisdom, right? The very true desire of wisdom is discipline. And how do you get discipline? By bowing down your neck, by humbling yourself down, and by doing it repetitive again, right? By being constant, by being diligent. That's how you build discipline, right? When your father tells you to do something and you don't want to do it, you do it anyways. And you keep doing it. That's how you build discipline. So when he's not around, you're disciplined enough to do it even though you don't want to. You're disciplined enough to do it even though you don't want to, because that's the right thing to do, right? And throughout time, you start doing it and it becomes habit, right? And it just becomes who you are. You just become a righteous person if you're disciplined enough to do it, right? To cast away the old man, right? For the very true desire of wisdom is discipline. That's how you gain wisdom. You got to be disciplined in it, right? And we got to be disciplined in doing these things so we can teach them to our children, right? And the care of discipline is love, right? And love is the keeping of her laws, right? So that's what we got to do. That's what love is. If we love our children, we got to keep the laws, and we got to pass these laws down to them, because it's like I said earlier, it's their heritage. It's what they were born to do. It's how we save them, right? It's how we teach them wisdom, and wisdom is going to be the stability of the times, pertaining to Isaiah 63, right? They're going to be the stability of the times, and right now these times are looking pretty unstable, so we need some wisdom. We got to teach ourselves first, and then our children, so we won't be hypocrites in their sight or in the Most High sight, right? And love is the keeping of our laws, and the giving heed unto our laws is the assurance of incorruption. That's how we assure that our children won't be incorrupted. When we teach ourselves these laws and when we teach them these laws, right, and they are disciplined to keep these laws, that's how we give heed to incorruption. That's how we know we're going to be incorruptible, Salakia, right? That's how we know. Right, so what did I want? I wanted Proverbs. So this is the book of Proverbs, chapter 2. I'm going to start at verse 1 for context, right? So this is the book of Proverbs, chapter 2, verse 1. My son, if thou wilt receive my words. So the context is a father talking to a son, right? And imparting to him words of wisdom, right? If you will receive these words of wisdom, which I'm about to give to you, which is going to come from after this, right? And hide my commandments with thee, right? And take my commandments with you and carry them. When you hide something, you clutch it for dear life, right? You hold it close to you so others won't see it. If you will hold this wisdom that I'm about to give to you, if you will hold it close to you, right? So that thou incline thy ear unto wisdom. And what is wisdom? Wisdom is the law, statutes, and commandments, right? Right? Incline thy ear unto them, right? That's what we should be saying to our children. Son, come on, sit by my side. Let me break down these scriptures for you. Let me break down what this law is meant for. Let me give to you some of the wisdom, right? That's what the elders should be doing to the younger, right? Imparting wisdom to them, telling them to incline their ear unto these laws, statutes, and commandments, right? And apply thine heart to understanding, right? And give your mind to understanding these laws, statutes, and commandments, right? It's cool to have wisdom, but understand the wisdom that you possess, right? Understand the principle that is behind these laws, statutes, and commandments, right? That's wisdom, right? You got to understand it. That's true wisdom, right? True wisdom comes with understanding. We got to teach our youngers or our children the understanding of the law, right? The principles of why we do these things, right? Because we're a holy nation, right? Apply thine heart to understanding. If thou criest after knowledge and lifteth thy voice for understanding, if thou seekest her as silver and searchest for her as hid treasure, right? If you're out here trying to chase wisdom as you're chasing a bag, you wouldn't be doing half the things you're out here doing now. You wouldn't be out here dying as you are now, right? If you're out here trying to incline your ears to wisdom, to these laws, statutes, and commandments, as much as you're out here trying to chase the bag, right? You wouldn't be doing half the things you're out here doing now, right? Then shalt thou understand the fear of the Lord, right? And find the knowledge of God, right? So that's what we should be teaching our children. We should be teaching our children the fear of God. Matter of fact, let's get that in Psalms, right? Because we want to call our children, oh, he's so smart, he's a genius, he started talking at this age. No, this is true wisdom. This is how you know that your child is a true genius, right? This is the book of Psalms, chapter 111, verse 10. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, right? When you teach your son the fear of the Lord, then he becomes a true genius. Then he becomes a true genius above everybody else. You want your son to be a genius, right? Teach him these laws, statutes, and commandments, right? Imagine he's 7 years old, already loving his brother. Imagine he's 7 years old, already keeping his mouth shut when he doesn't know something. Imagine how wise he come across. Well, look at him. Yeah, he just keeps it by himself. He doesn't do any unnecessary stuff. He doesn't do any of that. Imagine the dietary laws, how wise you seem when it comes out. Oh, pork is bad. Yeah. Hey, man. Jay been not eating pork. Oh, you think he knew that? Yeah, man. Jay always one level, one step ahead, right? These laws, statutes, commandments always keep you one step ahead. If you want your child to be a true genius, right? Have him keep these laws, statutes, commandments. Have him fear the Most High. That is the true beginning of wisdom, right? The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and a good understanding have they that do His commandments. Right? Your child is gonna have a good understanding. Teach him these laws, statutes, and commandments, and watch how elevated he becomes. Watch how much his mind becomes sharper. Right? When you teach him these laws, statutes, commandments, and when you teach him the understanding of them. Right? Now that you're better, you have to make your child better. You have a duty to teach him. Right? Good understanding have all they that keep his commandments. His praise endure forever, right? You want your child to be a genius? Have him keep the laws, statutes, commandments. Watch how sharp his mind becomes. Watch how quickly he gets things. Watch how much of a genius he becomes. Practically overnight, right? So I just want to finish with this precept. This is the book of Hebrews, chapter 12, verse 11, right? Now no chastening for the present seemeth to be joyous, but grievous. Nevertheless, afterward it yieldeth peaceable fruit. A yield of peaceable fruit of righteousness unto them which are exercised thereby, right? So don't be afraid to discipline your child, right? Because obviously in the moment they're not going to enjoy it, right? When I was a kid and I used to get whooped, I never enjoyed it. But growing up now, I'm glad I got whooped. I'm glad I got whooped because it made me the person I am. It gave me the integrity, the morals that I have now because my parents instilled that into me, right? That's how we instill these laws, statutes, and commandments, this incorruptible, right? This assurance of incorruptibility into our children. We chastise them when they go against us, right? Because in the future it's gonna yield righteous, peaceable fruit, right? So that's how we assure that our children don't become corrupted, right? That's how we assure that our children grow up to be actually somebodies, which we don't do a lot of. Our children grow up to be demons in a society. Top shooters, top this, smoking weed by the time he's 12 years old, and he's proud of it. He's glorifying that, right? But if we were in these scriptures, we'd be chastening them, right? They'd grow up to be righteous men, honorable men, like our great forefathers, right? Our honorable forefathers, which were men of renown in these scriptures, right? Men of fame, according to these scriptures. People like Samson, people like King David, right? So we got to come back to these laws, statutes, and commandments. We got to raise our children up righteously. We got to not be afraid to chasten them when they go against it, right? Don't fall into this Babylon doctrine that when you beat your child, you hate them and that's child abuse. No. Obviously, there's a difference between disciplining your child and child abuse, and we don't want to go overboard. But at the same time, we don't want to give them too much leeway, right? Matter of fact, let's see if I can find that last scripture. Don't give them too much leverage, lest he be your friend. Nah, that's not it. But roughly paraphrasing it, saying don't give your child too much leeway or too much leash unless he doesn't fear you and he thinks he's your friend and he can just walk over you, right? So obviously we don't want to go overboard with the punishment, but we don't want to not have the punishment where our child can have the mindset where they think they can do whatever they want because they can't. You're the parent, you're the one who knows better, and you're the one that's supposed to discipline them, and you're the one that's supposed to raise them according to these laws, statutes, commandments, which is what you should be doing, right? So obviously they're not going to like any chastisement, at the moment, that's what we just read in Hebrews 12, right? But in the end, it's going to yield a peaceable fruit, and that's what we want. We want our children to be righteous men in the end, right? We want our children to be somebody we can be proud of, right? Like Scripture says in Sirach 30, right? When we're gone, it's like we left ourselves, right? We never went anywhere because we left somebody in our stead that would conduct business the way we would conduct business, right? That's what we want, right? So that's what we got to do if that's what we want. We got to raise them according to the scripture. We got to not be afraid to chastise them, right? We got to talk about these scriptures to them 24/7 because we know kids, it takes a while for them to get it, right? So we got to keep repeating it, keep repeating it, keep repeating it until they get it. So if you're a brother or if you're a sister that's going through something like that, just keep the faith, endure, and keep at it. They're gonna get it. Bashim Mashiach Yahushua, they're gonna get it, right? So with that, I hope that lesson was edifying. I hope brothers and sisters took away something out of it that's important and edifies, or clarifies on a couple of scriptures and how to raise your child, right? So with that, I want to say, call Allah, Bashim Mashiach Yahushua, death to America.